Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and I wanted to do what I think is an interesting video about the Hermes items which I've bought that have increased the most in the last 5 years. This idea came to me because I was looking through all of my receipts to pull out the ones for my bags because I was updating my insurance coverage, and in doing so, I was looking back at the prices I paid for all of the other items as well. And what I started to notice was that really random items have had huge price increases over the last few years. I'm capping the time period at 5 years because that's when most brands started to jump the shark on prices. And also, I don't think it's fair for me to include all 11 years that I've been shopping with the brand because, of course, in that time period, there would be a significant difference. So you can't compare the Birkin that you bought in 1995 for a couple of $1,000s with the prices they are now. Similarly, I'm not going to include my Evelyn TPM, which I paid $1,725 back in 2017. I think they're a little over $2,400 now. So that's more than a 40% price increase, but that percentage would decrease significantly if I had bought it in 2020. The other reason I wanted to do this video is that for the longest time, Hermes has gotten a pass regarding price increases because we tend to focus on the ridiculous Chanel and Louis Vuitton increases. But Hermes has had significant increases as well. It just may not be on the items that you're thinking about because everyone is so focused on bags. So let's get started. And I thought we would go from the items that I've bought that have increased the least to the item that I bought that has had the biggest price increase in the past 5 years. Feel free to check my math, and we're going by percentages. So the items that increased by the greatest percentage in the last 5 years, as opposed to dollar amounts. And also know that I'm going to round the percentages to make things easier. So if something increased 39.9%, I'm just going to call that a 40% increase. Likewise, if something increased 40.3, that's going to be a 40% increase as well. Also, everything on this list has increased at least 35%. Of course, everything that I've bought at Hermes has increased in the last 5 years, but to keep things interesting and significant, we're going to have a 35% or more threshold. You may be surprised to know that the item on this list that has increased the least is a bag, and you may be even more surprised to learn that it's the only bag on this list and it's not a Birkin. When I ran the numbers, I was a bit surprised to learn that all of my other quota bags have increased less than 30% in the last 5 years. And even if I extended the time parameter back to 2019 when I got my very first Birkin, that bag, my black Birkin 30, has increased less than 30% in the last 6 years. Let me know if you find that as surprising as I do. So even though I got a Birkin first, those are not the bags that I bought in the last 5 years that have increased the most. What has increased the most is the price of my Kelly 25 Retourné, which has increased about 35%, which is one of the reasons I made the threshold 35% instead of 40, essentially because if I didn't, there would be 0 bags on this list. The Kelly 25 Retourné I bought in 2021 for $93.50, and it costs $12,600 today, which again is about 35%. So I was surprised that bags are actually at the very bottom of this list, almost not even making this list because they were rounded up just shy of 35%. Next on this list are my Twillies. Now, I recently showed you Twillies that I bought online, which are only my second pair of Twillies. My very first pair were bought in 2021 to match my gold Birkin, and I paid $180. Today, standard Twillies are $250, which is an increase of 39%. That is a huge increase on tiny pieces of silk. The current price of the next item pains me because I would ideally like this in a few more combinations, and that is the Kelly belt. I bought my first Kelly belt in 2022 for $890, and today it is $1,250, which is a 40% price increase. You'll hear a lot more about me complaining about the price of this belt in subsequent videos this year. Next up is the Chypre sandals. This was an item that I extolled its virtues and fair pricing because because when I bought my first and only pair back in 2022, they were very hard to get. Part of the difficulty in getting them was I don't think they thought the demand would be as high, so they didn't produce as many to meet demand. But also what made the demand so high was the pricing for these. I paid $680, which seemed like a bargain compared to the Chanel dad sandals back then, which were something wild like $1,200 or $1,500. Today, the Hermes Chypres are $1,050, and that is a 55% price increase. Jeez Louise. Next up is the sushi tray. I don't think they call it the sushi tray anymore. I'm looking right now. They just call it the Mosaic tray. Technically, I bought this tray in 2019 for $170. I don't think I ever talked about this on my channel, but it had like a little bit of a chip on it, which may have been my fault, or it may have been there when I first bought it and I just didn't notice it. So even though I bought it in 2019, I told my SA and she told me to bring it back. So I took it back in early 2020 and they gave me a new one, and I distinctly remember that the price was still $170. So technically my sushi tray is from 2020. The price for this tray now is $280. That is a 65% price increase. Okay, can you guess the item that I bought that has increased the most in the last 5 years? Feel free to take a guess in the comments and or tell me if you're surprised by this. And that item is the Samarkand paperweight. So this is the horse paperweight in the mahogany wood in the natural colorway. I don't use this as a paperweight. Instead, I love it as a little statue on a living room side table. I paid $630 back in 2021, which I thought was pretty reasonable, especially since I was using it as a piece of art. It took me a while to figure out what the price of this item is now because they make horse paperweights in so many variations. Some are much cheaper lacquered versions, and some are much more expensive and larger versions costing many thousands of dollars. So I really had to make sure I was getting the right model in terms of size, wood composition, and color, and I was able to find it. This exact paperweight today is now $1,050, which is a 67% increase, which makes this paperweight the item that I bought that has increased percentage-wise the most in the last 5 years. Is anyone else surprised by this? A 67% price increase is huge. I know some of you bag historians are probably thinking that is nothing if we compare it to Chanel handbag prices in the last 5 years. So if you look at the price of a medium Chanel classic flap in 2020, which I looked up and it was $5,800 compared to $11,300 today, that's a 95% price increase. So I recognize that is a huge difference, but we're not comparing brands. We're focusing on the fact that Hermes has also had significant price increases in the last 5 years. Yet they always seem to get a pass because of quality, or maybe it's perceived brand value, but they too have been hiking up their prices just like everyone else. And my sense is that Hermes is trying to increase its profits in other métiers. Of course, their leather goods department accounts for a huge percentage of their profits, but it seems like they are intent on balancing the scales and increasing their profits in other departments so that they're not overly reliant on leather goods for profitability. And we can see that by the fact that the percentage that handbags have increased is significantly less than the percentage of their increases in other departments. So even though the dollar amount of a sushi tray increasing by 65% is incomparable to a Kelly being hit with even a 5% price increase, but it's not overly difficult to produce. It serves as a great entree into the brand. And more importantly, they're probably willing to sell an unlimited number of sushi trays to maximize profits, whereas they're only willing to sell a limited amount of Kellys. I want to make this point, or if I've already made it, I'd like to reiterate it, that the categories of items that I've spoken about in this video aren't necessarily the categories that have had the biggest increases at Hermes. For all I know, furniture and saddlery and watches have increased in price the most, but I haven't bought any of those items, so I wouldn't know. My list is just that, the items that I've bought that have had the biggest price increases. Lastly, I wanted to do a couple of honorary mentions. The first is an item that just missed the cut, which are Oran sandals. I bought my first pair in 2020 for $630. Fun fact, Hermes had a price decrease on Orans that year. I think they were $640 or $650, but that didn't last very long. I think this was a response to the pandemic, and the prices were quickly adjusted back up by early 2021. The current price for basic Orans are $840, so they've increased about 33% since I first bought them, just shy of the 35% threshold criteria needed for this video. And my second honorary mention is to an item that I bought recently that has had the biggest price increase in the shortest amount of time, and that is the Cabriole kids perfume that I bought from my daughter that I showed you in the first part of my Hermes unboxings for this year. I paid $116 and it is now $147. That perfume increased 25% in 5 months. That is a huge difference in a small amount of time. So it's not on my list because it didn't meet the 35% threshold, but I'm guessing those of you who bought this perfume when it first came out a couple of years ago would be able to put it on your list. So tell me what you think about the Hermes price increases in the last 5 years. Were you as surprised as me by any of these items? I'm pretty surprised that bags have not increased nearly as much as I thought they did. I assumed that the top 3 items on this list would be bags, minus the paperweight, but I'm curious what item you've bought from Hermes that has increased the most in the last 5 years. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel. That would make my day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.